Hi guys, Happy New Year and welcome to our first BD Matters event of the year. We thought we'd get into this really early, so second day in for a lot of you. I know obviously there's a lot of malaise after the mulled wine and mince pies you've probably been enjoying. So this is a bit of a shot in the arm to give you some belief and a bit of a positive attitude of the year ahead. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Adam Graham. I'm the founder of Grey Matters, a new business consultancy, and also BD Matters, which is our community changing the face of sales and bringing people together around business development. So today I'm joined by two great friends and people, colleagues in the industry, Paul Mellor, who runs an independent ad agency called Mellor & Smith, and Tina Fegan, who's an independent procurement consultant. I'll let those guys introduce themselves later on. And they're going to be very straight talking, give you some great advice and tips that you can hopefully take with you. This is the first of our monthly interviews that happen on the first Wednesday of every month. They're free for all members and non-members. So the next one is the 1st of Feb, where we're interviewing Bayer Pharmaceuticals. And yeah, without further ado, I will now get straight into the interview where I'll be asking Paul what his biggest learnings were from 2022. Enjoy.
Yeah, year or two halves. Up until July, we were absolutely flying. Our clients were flying. The taps were on. We were doing lots of pretty cool work. I mean, if anyone spent sort of 30 seconds on our website, you'll know that we fly pretty close to the line, and we break as many rules as we can when it comes to our advertising work that we produce for clients. And then the second half of the year, it definitely quietened down. A number of clients started to feel the pinch, and they sort of felt the pinch all at a very similar time, I would say, probably from sort of July, August onwards. It did coincide with our probably our most brazen campaign of the year. We had a campaign which we might touch on in a minute anyway, for one of our clients called Fat Lad at the Back. So Fat Lad at the Back are they make cycling jerseys for fat people. They're based in the UK, they're based in Leeds. And we've been working with them for about a year or so. And then we had probably our most brazen campaign, which went out in July and August, which sort of inferred to the word cunt on a load of billboards all across London. It didn't actually say that. It was incredibly successful for the brand. Brand health metrics went through the roof, which was its job. But we were banned by the ASA in September. So I'm putting the slowdown that we experienced squarely at the feet of that campaign. Even if it's not true, it makes a good story. So, but yeah, the year was pretty much split into two halves, I would say. What I would find is that the last 3 to 4 weeks, pretty much December before Christmas, it did feel like a number of clients that had slowed things down had started to plan for a bigger kick than I was expecting in Q1 of this year.
A bigger kick.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, they haven't come through yet, but like the brands that I think, the way I've seen it just from our clients and the people that we're talking to, the brands that slowed down earlier are the ones that are now having the bigger conversations for Q1 of this year, and the brands that slowed down towards the end of the year, so they sort of slowed down second wave, as it were, they're not coming back to the table yet.
What do you need to do to sort of ensure success? How do you sort of attract some of those more risk taking brands?
It's not a strange one. It's not an easy answer. There are a myriad of things. If it was just one thing, I'd just do that one thing. It'd be lovely if it was just a silver bullet. I think there's a couple of things that we are consistently reminding ourselves of that have, over the 14 years, proved really effective at getting onto the radar of new clients and staying on the radar of current clients. And that is two things. First is staying really true to who we are, like being really, really clear about what it is that we do and what we don't do, the type of work that we are famous for and are really good at, I would say world class at, being really true to that and not deviating. And then the second thing is the using work to sell. You know, nothing really gets the attention of, in my experience, nothing really gets the attention of prospective clients or reminds current clients of what we bring to the table better than seeing our work out there in the world. You know, I've always found that as a really effective. It definitely isn't the only thing, and there are a myriad of things that I'm sure we get down into the weeds, but I've always tried to keep things really simple, and I've kind of used those two have served us well over the last 14 years.
And I guess the Fat Lad work was sort of like the prime example of that, where, you know, because it allowed you to shout about your work a lot, right? And it got a lot of exposure. So what did you learn from that experience? What do you think you would do again, and what do you think you wouldn't do again?
I'm learning to pimp the fuck out of it, because it's really effective at getting onto the into the inbox and, you know, onto the radar of prospective clients and current clients. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that it was never intended to be, but has proved really effective at, is being a calling card for us. You know, being able to use it as a way of reminding people about what we do that's different to most, if not all, other agencies.
But one thing you're good at, I see, you're on LinkedIn in particular.
Loads of stuff. I'm brilliant at loads of stuff.
I wouldn't go that far, but on social media, you are good. You are loud, and you get a lot of interaction and engagement and stuff. Like, but a lot of agency owners and BD people I talk to, they don't know where to start with social media, what to say. They're too nervous to post it. They're too worried about the backlash and the comments they're going to be made. Is there anything? What advice could you give maybe anyone like that who's thinking, and what do I do on social, and is it worth it?
Well, the thing what I take there is, well, first of all, everything that we do is considered. There isn't anything that isn't considered about anything that we put out there in the world. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I wouldn't get down into the weeds of social as like a specific thing. We take a very much, I mean, we've worked with you on this, right? We take a much more strategic view on all of the things that go out there into the world, all of the, let's call it, you know, our, marketing ourselves as an agency. All of those things are highly considered, and they all kind of come from a central point, a central positioning. And then there are different channels do different jobs. I mean, we talk about that to our clients. We're an ad agency, you know, we're channel agnostic. I don't just make TV ads, I make campaigns that sit on a myriad of different channels. So I don't see why an agency should be any different. So we don't have a social strategy, an email strategy, We have a, business development strategy that sits across a sort of a myriad of different go-to-market channels. In terms of social specifically, it reminds me of a quote from Cindy Gallop. Now I'm probably going to bastardize it because Cindy's fucking brilliant and I'm not. But ultimately, what she was saying was that advertising isn't nearly as effective as we think it is. So if you're nervous about putting something out on social, it's probably nowhere near as controversial as you think it is. It's probably going to have nowhere near as negative an impact on your brand or, the agency's brand as you think it might. And it probably won't have anywhere near as positive effect. If only it were that easy. So actually just give it a go. I mean, yesterday I posted my first LinkedIn post of the year, and I talked about my resolutions for the new year, of which I have two, and one of them was to not look at my phone while I was going for a number two. So I mentioned the word poo in a LinkedIn post. How unprofessional of me. But it's not going to have anywhere near as negative of an impact and nowhere near as a positive impact as people sort of fear that it might. So just give it a go. What's the worst that could happen?
Remove the filter, clearly, of
yeah.
Just say what's on your mind. Okay, no, cool. So next question. What have you seen other people or a person doing that you've always wanted to try?
What within sort of agency land?
Well, I'd quite like to hear both answers, but yeah, let's keep to the business for now.
Who's doing something that I really look up to? You know what? I don't think there are that many people doing a brilliant job. First of all, there are a number of agencies that I look at and I really like the look of, and I'm always interested what they're up to. So I think Snask in Sweden, I think are a fantastic agency. I'm always interested what they're up to. It's really hard not to like what Uncommon do on a pretty regular basis. I might not like all of their work, but I really like a lot of their work and I really like how they go about it. Who else do I really like the look of? I mean, I think that's a fairly small list.
Let's keep it small. I mean, what is it about them, or that's you find inspiring?
Well, the other thing that I really like is Oliver Agency. I think their model of in-housing, sort of as a point of difference, I think I know it's not new, but I think it's a lovely model. I think it's not one that we follow, but I think it has its merits. And the creative director there is someone that I didn't really know about for a long time, which is terrible of me. I think the guy's called David Shanks, possibly. I could be could be completely wrong, but I've started following a lot of what he does, and I really like the way that he talks about sort of the creative endeavor, like sort of the creative process and the appetite, and the appetite to never be satisfied with the outcome. You could have always made it better. So I think those are. I forgot, what was the second part of your question?
Well, the other part was just about people who inspire you and sort of why they, or it could be an agency, or why they inspire you. Is there any people books you're reading or people you follow that you just think?
Well, Blair Enns' The Win Without Pitching manifesto is pretty much a staple. It's not, there's my bookcase over there, but it's on my bedside table. I tried to read it once a year. So I started reading it a few days ago to remind myself. It's a fantastic book.
It's so short. It's one you can like pick up again and again, can't you? Because it's like little tidbits throughout it.
So I think that's a fantastic book. The other thing that I would say, just interestingly about books, is there's a lot of people that read lots of like sort of industry orientated books and never really do anything with the findings or the insights that are gleaned out of them. People are very good at reading books and pretty bad at implementing a lot of the stuff that they learn out of them, and because old habits die hard. So if I had a third resolution for the year, it would be, I hope that people read books and then actually implement what they learn out of them, because it's so easy to read the book and then just kind of slip back into old habits. Which is why I read the Blair Enns Win Without Pitching book sort of every year to remind myself, because it's very easy to forget it.
Yeah, no, that's good. But that's the reason I never finish books ever, because I read literally a line or a chapter and come up with an idea, and that's it. I'm done. I'm away with the fairies, like thinking about that, and I don't actually get to finish anything. So it's like maybe not the best way of reading a book.
That's not great advice, is it?
I have endless of unfinished, but I have lots of ideas. I just never get to the end of a book. So don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with not finishing a book. Although that said, if I'd written a novel and people hadn't got to the end, I'd be mortified. But I don't think
I don't tell the author. I mean,
yeah,
I don't have to know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone starting an agency right now?
I would tell them to focus on one thing only, become world-class at one thing. When we started, I certainly started with that intention, and over a sort of 4 or 5 year period, we slipped away from that and we lost our focus and we became a bit fatter and flabbier, and we started using words like full service creative agency, which makes me sick in my mouth now. And we almost had to have a bit of a sort of a word with ourselves after about 4 or 5 years, and we then came back to our core raison d'etre, and we're very, very focused and have been over the last 8, 9, 10 years at doing that, and it's served us well. And I wish that I hadn't spent those years kind of slipping away from what it is that we're really good at and what the kind of work we want to do, and being able to say no as much as we were saying yes, now we have a network of partners, agency partners. So when we're working with a client and they start asking us, oh, can you look at our website, for example? I'm like, that's not what we do. We're very, very focused on what it is that we do. We work in advertising, communication, making someone the most famous they can possibly be in a category. If then a client starts talking about, sort of developing their web strategy, website, whatever it may well be, we then have a partner that we bring in. The client doesn't have to use that agency, but we can bring them into the conversation. And what that does is it keeps us on a really clear line as to what we're really good at, but the client still gets served. They still get the challenges answered that they may have, because it's not always an advertising problem. It can be something else problem. And
I guess it keeps the client also focused on the outcome, right? So that they being that outcome that they want.
Yeah,
how we're going to get there.
I'd love it if I had all the answers to everything, but we don't. We have the answers to the one thing that we're brilliant at, I think, and the client has other challenges that we very likely don't have the answers to. But they want someone that they either kind of trust or we have worked with before, because obviously there's going to be some level of working together, and so they often trust that recommendation where we bring in a partner. But in answer to your question, the thing that I would give, the advice I would give to anybody starting an agency right now is be really, really focused on that one thing. I think is that not the Seth Godin Purple Cow sort of thought process, or the principle of focusing down onto as smaller audience as you can possibly sort of tightly create, and then serving that audience? That's what's going to get you to first base.
I don't know, because I've not got to the end of that book, but maybe someone else has read it. But but I think finding that focus, like you said, and then sticking to it are two of the hardest things I think agencies have to do. And it's a bit, and I was listening to a Simon Sinek podcast, and it's a bit like the feeling of just feeling very overwhelmed when you've just got so many things to focus on, which is probably quite relevant to this time of the year, because we all work in like these kind of annual calendars, and we're thinking, fuck, how are we going to hit these massive objectives? And it can feel overwhelming. And so his advice is basically just don't look at everything, just look at one thing and do it well. So just eat one piece of a cake at a time, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he talks a lot of bollocks, to be honest, but that's actually, I'd agree with that for sure.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, look, this stuff, I think we complicate it ourselves. Like, I think we almost need to get it out of our own way. Like it's the creative industry is fantastic. It should be fun and invigorating. It should be a brilliant way to make a living, and we almost kind of get in the way of ourselves to make it as complicated as we possibly can. And actually, should be something really, really simple. And so all I ever do is talk about how simplified can we make this? How straightforward? How many steps can we remove?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and then just lastly, then new biz tactic or cold outreach tactic. What's the sort of best you've seen, or what's worked for Mellor and Smith, and you would do again?
It's again, I mean, I think why is the buying pattern of a client or a prospective client, why is their buying pattern of an agency different to how somebody buys any other or procures any other type of process? I don't think it's largely that different. Certainly in my experience, it's not. And I think we kind of invent that it's this really, really difficult thing, and we must complicate it, and we must find really novel ways to do things. Actually, a lot of the time doing the basics well is often overlooked. That, you know, marketers are so, or certainly, you know, agencies are so easily distracted with the shiny new thing that they think this is going to be the answer to all of my problems, and then they forget all of the basics. You know, so I don't think there's actually a tactic, you know, any one tactic that's more powerful, or any one tactic that's been more effective to some of its parts. And that's really boring. But that's how it is. If you want to get someone's attention, you're probably not going to get their attention by the first time you speak to them, and then they're going to go, yeah, mate, here's £1 million. Here's the contract. That just doesn't happen. Like, it's like, if it does, it never happens to me. Like, what's far more likely to happen is that we'd be on the radar of somebody for 2, 3, 4 years. And then when there's a trigger of whatever that trigger may well be, and actually more often than not, the trigger, you know, because obviously we don't see that trigger, we're the response to that trigger. You know, the trigger is often something like, in the boardroom, someone just says, you know what, our problem is we're just not famous enough. And then somewhere in the mental, you know, the memory structures of somebody in that room, they go, Mellor & Smith, they talk about fame all the time and making brands famous in their category. And they go, Bonza, pick up the bat phone to Paul. Like, that's pretty much how, and that sounds really lame, really like obvious, but that's how advertising works. Why would it be any different to how you buy your toothpaste to how you procure your advertising services?
So be memorable is the, like,
be memorable, like, get noticed, be memorable. You know, I mean, like, we talk about it often enough, you know, Byron Sharp with how brands grow, building memory structures and that's how brands recall. So that's how the public recall brands. It's no different, you know, as I just said there, someone in a boardroom says, you know, our problem is we're just not famous enough. And that memory structure, then they hopefully then go, fucking hell, Mellor & Smith, they're all about fame, aren't they? Like, hopefully that's the memory structure that is created through all of the outreach that we do over the years. To that point, that trigger is made, and then they pick up the phone to us.
Yeah, consistency. And okay, great, love it. Pasta or noodles? What do you
know? No, man, noodles, always. Rice ones, you know, those ones that you can almost see through.
The really stringy ones. Never, they go all soppy when you overcook them.
Man, that in a ramen, now we're talking. But that's like contraband here. I mean, I eat ramen whenever I come back to London, but I live in France now, and they think Asian food is like shit. So me eating Asian food is like proper contraband. So when people come to stay from the UK, I have to like, oh, we've got a lovely, like, you know, curry tonight. Like, that's like, you know, once a month for us. And people go, oh, I had a curry last night, you know, down Brick Lane or whatever. Anyway, we digress.
That's an insight I never thought I'd find out. Cool.
Adam, I've got a question for Paul.
Oh, go on.
Do you deal with any procurement people?
Yeah, we don't always get on, to be honest.
I can imagine that.
What I tend to find, it's the same with the legal department as well, within clients. So I'm not hired to like play nice with procurement people or legal people. Like, that's not why the CMO hires us. If that were the case, they'd hire another agency. What I have found over the years, though, is that if you can work out a way to work together, they actually turn into really strong relationships. So some of the strongest relationships I have within our clients are with the procurement or legal departments. But they start off relatively rocky, where we kind of like, you know, throw a few punches, and then over the years we become, you know, like bezies. So
yeah, I can imagine that. So
that's how I tend to find, those two departments.
Especially when you said about the Blair Ennis thing, because obviously that's very anti what the procurement role is, when without pitching, when we run pitches. So as soon as you said that, I thought, and you've got such strong views that you know, the bristles go up from a procurement point of view is someone who doesn't conform. But I admire you for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I want to speak to procurement people as little as possible. I mean, if I can, we want to win work without even having to deal with procurement. But that's the whole Blair Ennis pitch within Win Without Pitching. It's be the expert so that there is no pitch. Like, these are the world-class experts at the thing that they do. Why would we run a pitch? That's the whole premise of the book.
Yeah.
All right.
It helps that you've got a strong personality.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
This has ended better than I thought. I thought we were going to get into a fight at one point. But I guess procurement are also, like, not just, I know what you're saying, Tina, about the pitching, but which we'll get onto in a minute, but procurement's also about the ongoing relationship, right?
Yeah.
And it's also the strategic decisions to even look for an agency or what sort of agency in the first place. So even if you don't want to engage with procurement throughout the actual pitching buying decision, procurement will always be involved within certain brands, right? At certain levels, and
Yeah, I think obviously for bigger organisations, obviously for smaller ones, not. But I suppose the only thing that would concern me, if I look at sort of going forward with what's going on in the economic, climate, etc., the procurement really is at the forefront of sourcing what organisations need to do to give them those solutions to make sure they're fit for the future. And I think, from a procurement industry point of view, I think we feel very strongly about that. And I think, and that came out of the pandemic. I remember talking to Andrew, was head of procurement for M&S, about the pivotal role that they had when the shit did hit the fan. It tells quite a funny story in that they did tier 1 and tier 2. Who are the really important suppliers? And it's months and months working on tier 1 and tier 2. When the shit hit the fan and they had to close the stores, who was the most important supplier to them? Rentokil. Because keeping rats and stuff out, and they weren't a key supplier. So it was really important, and it really made him evaluate his whole supply structure. So I suppose that was the only thing, why I asked Paul that. I do think procurement, and I would say it, being a procurement person, are even more so coming out of COVID and going into the economic crisis. Really about managing inflation, looking at supply chain issues, the fallout from Brexit, etc. The Ukraine war, all those things, procurement people are having to juggle and look at the costs. I was talking to the procurement guy, chaired a conference beginning of December, the head of procurement at Santander, and they've got a separate inflation budget as well as managing their supply chain costs, because they know they've got to work with suppliers. So I think procurement are much more at the forefront going forward, and I think that role will grow and grow, to be honest. So you do have to work with them. But
yeah, I agree that the political clout that the procurement department has within an organization has grown. I've been doing this for 20 years. I think it's grown incredibly in those 20 years, and I can only see the trend becoming more so. And like I said, my kind of view is I try and avoid them, if I can. But if I can't, then like I said, we throw a few punches. We get in a room, and then actually we become, like I say, best friends.
But it's good you can throw a few punches, but I think a lot of agencies can't, because when you've got an oversupply market, which is something I've been saying for years and years, when you've got 10,000, 20,000, a million agencies, especially now it's a global marketplace, it's an oversupply market. So I think it is very hard for agencies to say no often. So the fact you've got that confidence, Paul, does go a long way. And I admire agencies that have got it, and you're good for some people and you're not good for others. But it is hard for other agencies, I think, in that positioning and having that confidence to say, no, I'm not doing that. This is what the price is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, Tina, because also I think there's two ways of looking at it. Obviously, Paul's, got a strategy, and there's certain things that work for Mellor & Smith. And I think there's other strategies that are going to work for other agencies in terms of some wanting to embrace relationships with procurement. I see people doing more outreach and connecting more with procurement individuals and trying to understand them better. And that's a whole nother side. I think that's going to continue as well this year, from a new business perspective. Like you said, because of the clout they're getting, because of the position they're in. Okay, well, let's get into some of your questions. I'm going to unpin you, Paul, if that's all right.
I do agree with Paul, though, if you can avoid procurement, it's always easier. Unless it's me, of course. But I do agree with that, because you're only going to get caught up in contracts and stuff like that. But, you can't avoid them. But, yeah.
We'll try. So what was your biggest learning from 2022?
Good question, which I hadn't prepared for. So you did catch me on the hop there. And I'm a bit like Paul saying, actually, from a business point of view, I had a really busy first 6 months really busy, and then I say come the summer, a few sort of health issues, both myself and my partner made you reevaluate, but actually things did get really quiet, and I think that learning is a bit more forward planning, forward thinking, and I think the same is true for most people. I think often very reactive, but sometimes it's good to be thinking ahead a bit. And I think especially in the economic climate we are in and the situation we're in, just a bit more insight stroke foresight, I think, is probably my biggest learning. In that, I think it's true of agencies. When you're in the weeds, aren't you, and everyone's really, really busy. At one point I was managing like 8 different clients, and all great, but you think, oh, I'm juggling a bit, and what do I do that, and what's the next thing? Is then just thinking a bit more time to think ahead. I'm not a great business book reader, but I am a great reader, and I've discovered the love of reading actually. And I think the other learning was just a bit more downtime.
Yeah,
to actually just invest a bit more time in yourself.
Yeah, from a mental health
and finish a book.
Burning out, finishing books is obviously helpful and would probably help with both of those. But yeah, I think it's look, we can't disagree with that. More foresight. I think what's so hard in this market is it's so unpredictable, right? No one knows what's going to happen with like retail this year, and there's so many other things that are going on that are so unpredictable.
I think you could do a bit more than that, because I think you can look. I mean, I've just spent like the last day just catching up on the post and on the emails, and you can look at the trends, can't you? And if you look at the different publications that are coming out, so I think you can get a bit more insight. I mean, yeah, there's a degree of unpredictability, but there's also some predictability and some forecasting, and we can all sit on webinars about the future 2023, and I think it's worth doing that. I do think, because I think we need, like, talking to some procurement people before Christmas, a lot were saying is, yeah, we're going to button down for 23, but actually 24, 25, we're predicting we're going to be X. So I think the learning, especially for people on the call, is to have that dialogue with clients now, and both sets of clients, not just the marketing or your stakeholders, because they're the budgets, but if you have got a relationship with procurement, talking to them, say talking to this guy who was Santander guy, really, really insightful, and especially from a financial services point of view, is how they're going to get through 23, but actually some positive news for 24, 25, not just UK, but looking across the world. So I think unpredictability, yes, but I think invest a bit of time in just reading. There's lots of free information out there, but what other agencies and what other publications are saying, and just use that a bit, and just check in with clients perhaps a bit more about their future plans 18, 24 months out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you think I can't imagine many agencies are thinking that far ahead, when they're talking to brands, or even when they're doing cold outreach or anything like that. But I guess from what you're saying is that this year is very much about survival, so almost like battening down the hatches, but with a view of long-term planning into the next couple of years.
I think that hold agencies in good stead. I have those conversations now, just be that 1, 2, 3 steps ahead, and and plan, and with the clients, plan with them, say, right, okay, it might be a bit tough now, but actually what you're looking for. And I've got a couple of big marketing clients that basically have got no marketing budgets for this year, literally no marketing budgets, Innocent being one, for example. And I did a big project with them last year, looking across Europe at all their agencies, and they're spending like £20 million. But hang in there, because actually for 24, and I've got a call this afternoon at 3:30, and thinking, oh, we're just starting to think about 24, so they're already starting to think about it. So definitely, it is, isn't it? And it's going from one extreme to another. The same with Ferrara. First of all, they were like, we're going to cut 20% out of the budgets, and now they're like, we're actually probably not going to spend anything for 23. But I'm going over to Luxembourg in February for a big meeting about it all. So I think start thinking now, but I think medium to long term, and have that engagement with clients now, both not just the marketing guys, but also the procurement guys, people you've got a relationship with. So you're getting that insight, because they're doing plans. So be part of those plans.
Yeah. Really, really interesting. So you talked a little bit about procurement, and we've talked for many years about procurement being sort of misunderstood, and the brand of procurement. It feels like when they may be getting it more right, or they're being more understood, it might just be a case of time, just things falling into place. But do you think procurement are getting it right? at the moment.
Not helped by that thing before Christmas in the States. Was it that who was it? Dr. Pepper's, was it PR agency, and it was a tender, and it's 360 days payment terms, especially for PR. I mean, like that thing doesn't help, does it?
Not everyone getting it right. There's a lot of it. Procurement against procurement is a whole nother battle.
I think and I've always felt this, I think procurement and agencies have come a long way together, in that I think agencies have invested more time, in suddenly realizing procurement's not going to go away. So I've been doing it for 30 years, so one would hope we're not. I think procurement have come a long way in being more understanding of agencies and the creative way they work, and how important things like chemistry, it's not going to be everybody, is it? But I would say, coming out of COVID, we always poo-pooed the word partnership, because agencies love being partners and not suppliers. But I do think coming out of COVID, because it was so tough and it was such a shock to everybody, that the good relationships did really rise to the top. And actually, I think everyone learned from that to say, actually, when you have got a partnership, it does work really well. We're in it together, I think. And I saw some great behaviour from agencies during that period, and I saw some shocking behaviour. Not ringing the CMO for 3 months. It's like, why have you not done that to this agency chief? And everyone's like, well, they didn't ring us. Other agencies stepping in saying, we've got our board available. Whatever you want us to do, we can help. So I think procurement and agencies have come a long way. I think sometimes marketeers still use this as a bit of a stick, to hide behind their behaviour. And I have to be careful, because obviously a lot of my work comes from CMOs. But they are so busy.
I think that's one thing that a lot of agencies don't understand, and it differs in every organisation, is the role of procurement in the organisation and the relationship between procurement and the marketing team. They kind of see them as, I don't know, all as one, or they're all on the same side, it's them against us. So actually, I know, talking to a lot of procurement individuals, that there's a lot of battles between procurement and marketing, and actually sometimes they're on the other side. But I think agencies would really help themselves and their new business processes if they understood the relationship that those two departments had, and how they view each other and how they use each other.
I mean, years ago when I worked agency side, I worked at Gray and Low, we had a big request from Unilever procurement, and it was ridiculous what they were asking for, and it was just procurement on his own. And I said to the account person, go and talk to your internal stakeholder at Unilever, who had no idea what was going on, and the project got stopped. So I totally agree, Adam. You should never be approached on your own by a procurement person. It's really important that you both see, especially in that very first meeting, that you have procurement and the stakeholder. I mean, at the end of the day, the stakeholder had the budget. At the end of the day, it's very rare procurement has the budget. But procurement, I think even more so, are at the forefront of, like, this is what we're doing in terms of the supplier base. We have got pressure on costs, we have got supply chain issues, we are managing inflation. Procurement is at the forefront of managing that, but ultimately they need to work alongside their internal stakeholders, because they've got to be happy in what procurement are doing for them. But that's the more tricksy relationship than procurement and agencies. So I think have come a long way. It is more between procurement and the internal stakeholder, because let's face it, if I was buying sugar, actually as a buyer, I know where I go and get sugar from. Or black currants. I used to work for GSK. You go to Colford, where they grew black currants for World War II. But actually, if you look at the marketing category across any of the categories we deal with, be it creative, PR, research, the internal stakeholders know the marketplace. And that's not like any other category of procurement. If I was buying the widgets for cars, or you say the black currants from Ribena, I'm probably the only person that knows where to source that from. But in the whole marketing and advertising world, our stakeholders are pretty switched on, because we know they like the events and conferences and they're social animals. So it is a tricky role for procurement. I'm not saying here's a tiny violin about procurement, but it can be trickier. It can be tricky because you've got challenging stakeholders who want to do their own thing. And also, like Paul said, we want to deal with uncommon. Who are the new agency? We want to deal with Niels. Get Niels. And he's like, I'm not getting out of bed for less than $500,000 now, or whatever. Have you seen my BA work?
The other thing, obviously, that's been prolific in the world in the last couple of years is diversity and inclusion and sustainability. And I was interested in understanding, because obviously they're probably quite key agendas that procurement are driving to make sure that, that what a company is buying is ethically sourced and is reflective of doing good in the world. So how's that featuring in procurement?
Yeah. Good question. I think if you're stateside, D&I is, or American-driven company, like a Coke or a Target, D&I is top of the agenda. Where it's not as top in Europe. Europe is definitely sustainability. Obviously both are key, but actually, if you look at any scoring sheet, they're still only about 10%. So they are key, and I think especially D&I in the States, you have got the trade bodies over there doing lists of D&I suppliers, because you have not just the minority-owned ones, you've got the veterans and stuff like that, and it's massive. If you deal with a states-based client, it's absolutely massive. And people like Pepsi or Coke, for example, have got a target of X% of the supply base being from minority-owned or DI suppliers. Right. Sustainability, I think, is an interesting one, and I think it is. Looking at just doing some reading about procurement trends this year, it's a #1 trend across all procurement, not just marketing. And basically, what our trade press is saying is you've got to put money where your mouth is. That people are talking about sustainability, but look at the disappointing outcome of COP27. And so I'm involved in the Conscious Advertising Network, and our two co-founders, Jake and Harriet, were there. It was just really disappointing. And I think we struggle to get brands to sign up to the Conscious Advertising Network. It doesn't cost anything. We've got 7 manifestos, things like diversity, but we've also got hate speech, children, misinformation, climate. We've only got 4 or 5 brands that signed up. You're like, it's just, it's 7 manifestos. It's about how you buy your media. It's not difficult. You should be doing this. So I do.
Why aren't they doing it? What are they
too difficult? Too difficult. It's like, well, if your media agency signed up, like Mediacom or Havas, they're abiding to it. So you should be making sure they are buying your media according to these standards. Yeah. Well, we can't concentrate on all of those things. Well, you should be. So I think this year is going to be a massive push, I think, on sustainability, because they're all talking about it, but they're not following through on it.
Yeah.
So I think you'll really see it this year across the board, because consumers want that.
What can agencies be doing more to have that seen by procurement? Is it about policies or, I don't know, things on the website? How do they kind of communicate that they've got these things in place and they are considering it?
Yeah, I think all those sort of things, and you should be supporting initiatives like Ali's Creative Equals, on the D&I, for example. I mean, obviously that's a massive, obviously I would say Conscious Advertising Network from our point of view, but also walk the talk, and that's what the procurement press is saying actually for clients as well. It's all very well Nestle or whatever saying we hit these targets and we're carbon free or we're doing this, but actually it's more than just that. Or Ad Green, if you're making TV production, is and okay, it is, you have got to put resource on it, and that's what the other answer about dealing with procurement is. I find agencies don't have a dedicated resource to deal with procurement, and I think they lose that by having 4 different people deal with procurement. You're losing any knowledge. So I do think you need to have a focal point in the agency to deal with procurement. But I think on D&I and sustainability, you need to have a person. And I know it's hard when you've got a smaller agency. And we're seeing more of the agency network groups have a head of sustainability or a head of D&I. So I think support the initiatives, but also be out there demonstrating how it's working. So for us, for example, one of our clients on SSC, who's a client of mine anyway, but Susie's always up for the brand manager there, going out and saying why they support it and what they're doing about their wind turbines and what they're doing here. Or O2, they're a member because their engineers got targeted during COVID because all these conspiracy theories about 5G masks spreading COVID. So walk the talk. I think that's what the trade press is saying to procurement. And I think agencies need to walk the talk. It's going to be so key. But I think definitely climate and sustainability from Europe, D&I to a lesser extent, but it is up and coming. If you're dealing with state size, definitely D&I with a bit of sustainability. But bearing in mind, at the moment, it's 5-10% of scoring sheets. So whilst people talk about it, it's not a 50% score at the moment.
Are brands like open about that? I always find it, with the scoring criteria, it's kind of like hidden a little bit. a brand's very, because I presume it's more important to some brands, you know, than others, than if it's kind of a core part of their business. So are they quite vocal about it in those instances?
Some clients are and some clients aren't. We always said, and just ask the question.
Right.
They should be. They should be. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how many agencies are pitching? Who are they? Question, isn't it? But I think always ask. If they say no, they say no. But
Yeah,
you will.
yeah.
I think you will find. I don't think the percentage will go up that much. So it's still a small percent. It's important, but it's not. I think chemistry, creative idea, strategic idea, commercials are still going to be 80% of a score. You know, if they've got a scoring structure.
Okay. If anyone's got any other questions, by the way, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand or message, and I can bring Paul back as well. We can all finish off and have a chat for the last 10 minutes. I do have one other question. Is just for you, Tina. Like, in terms of how can agencies actually start to form a better relationship with procurement? How do they like to be approached and spoken to and invited in?
I think agencies are always shied away from dealing with procurement, you know, and, you know, rightly so in some cases, or, you know, we're only going to give the answers to each supplier and all that sort of attitude, which is awful. But I think just make the effort to engage with them. If you've got a strategy for dealing with stakeholders, make sure you've got a strategy for dealing with procurement. For years and years, I've said to every agency I ever work with, what is your strategy for dealing with procurement? Have you got a procurement club? You know, are you getting them all together once a month, every quarter, and saying, okay, what's good, what's bad? Are we done this? And it can be a bit, obviously, terrifying, but, you know, educate them. I mean, half the trouble with a lot of new procurement people coming in is they're buying baked beans last week. And they try and apply the baked bean buying process, which is a true story about the Heinz baked bean buyer, who went from buying baked beans, which massive category, to buying digital services and had no idea because she applied the baked bean buying process to buy digital services. So I think agencies, one, have a strategy for dealing with procurement, and I honestly think have a procurement club. Get them all to get all your procurement clients together on a regular basis. They don't get out, they don't see each other, they love networking. Obviously, be careful on what chocolate biscuits you have, because they will judge you if it's
all got loads of
important ones. Yeah, play them down. Make sure they're like own brand ones or something, but don't say Tina Fegan said. And I think, you know, treat them, but also educate them. I've seen some great examples, especially from media agencies, where they've got their own academy, you know, OMD Academy or whatever. And as part of the added value, it is okay in a contract. You know, you can come to our training courses, educate them, because it will really help you. Because I never worked so bloody hard as when I worked for those two ad agencies. Okay, I had to manage Gary Lace and his expenses bill, and the Christmas party, but I never worked so hard when I was agency side. And I think a lot of procurement people don't realise, you know, how hard agencies work. So I think invest the time, have a strategy, but educate them. Preferably not on Friday afternoon when the beers are coming around, but, you know, just so they know what it's like to be an agency person, and especially things like new categories like digital. Get them in, and so they can understand what they're buying. It makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah, but we're going to be doing a lot more with procurement through BD.
You've got Malik, haven't you, next month?
Yeah, we've got Malik from Bayer coming in, and we've got
Brilliant.
Fidelity International coming in April, and a few other big brands we're talking to. So I think it's really interesting to keep this dialogue going, and how we can understand each other more and more.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing it, Adam. It's good that you are getting procurement, other than me, other people talking.
Going to bring Paul back in the mix. I know we've only got a few minutes. Oh, I didn't ask you, Tina, pasta or noodles?
Pasta. Even though I've been on a diet for the last year and lost nearly 6 stone.
Am I not eating pasta?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I do miss it.
Say it was a lot healthier.
I do miss it, but noodles is more healthier, isn't it? Really.
Just chocolate biscuits. That's
no more. As of today, I was supposed to start a juicing diet today, but I met a friend for breakfast, and I was like, stuff it, had a bacon sandwich. That's it now. I'm on the juicing diet.
That's it.
I did confess it to my old man who already had his, and I was like, oh, shit. I was like, yeah, I've had a bacon sandwich. Right, that's it. So
at least if you've told one person, that's the important thing. You've been honest about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
What you, Adam? Are you pasta or noodles?
Me, Didn't even think to answer my own bloody question. I'm going to go noodles.
Oh.
I find pasta a bit plain sometimes. I
Oh,
mean, I know
hang on. You got to go down Italy, get yourself a nice pasta dish. You can't say
you can get good pasta, but I don't know. I just find it all a bit the same. Whereas noodles, just you can combine it with so many different things that I think.
So you can with pasta.
Yeah, you're right, mate. You can only have spaghetti bolognese. You can't have anything else.
That's it. That's it. Look, I'm allowed my own answer on it. Jesus. Paul, what's the plan this year? What do you want to achieve? Is there what would be success in
I want to do as little work as possible, to be honest.
And ski.
Yeah, I did. I mean, the snow is terrible at the moment, but I did go for a ski with the kids this morning. Yeah, I want to do as little as possible. Serious answer. I mean, that is a pretty serious answer. But what do I want to do? It'd be just more work that is effective. The kind of work that other people just won't do. The work that only we can do. You know,
hitting off more advertising or standards authorization companies.
No, well, you know what? I mean, you know this because obviously we worked together for a couple of years, but we never wrote that ad to get banned. As much as people think that we did, yeah. You know. But we did. I'm claiming the official world record for the most amount of cunts in a letter from the ASA. They wrote the word cunt 7 times.
What, the full word?
Full word. They didn't even asterisk it out, and we asterisked it out.
I saw that on your website.
Yeah. So that's the world record officially. I mean, it's a bit glib, isn't it, to write ads that get banned? I think that's not what we're in the game for. So I would never write ads to purposely wind up the ASA.
Like Brewdog
that only we can. Sorry?
No Brewdog do that. I feel like Brewdog do it on purpose to like.
Yeah, look at their reputation though. And
I also think that the public see through stuff like that. You know, the public want to be entertained. They don't want, sort of crassness for the sake of crassness. They want you to make them. They want to be made to laugh. You know, we should be tickling them, titillating them. You know, titivating them. Anything else beginning with T?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you got any more?
Yeah.
What did the client think, Paul, when that ad was banned? Then the Fat Boys. What did the client say when he got banned? So we had a plan in place for what would happen. So we, as part of the selling in process, as part of the getting the sort of the idea signed off, they were obviously very concerned. Like, what happens? Like, is this going to break the rules? And if it does, what happens? Yeah. What does that mean? Because they'd never done that type of thing before. They'd never really advertised before working with us. And so they understood the risks, and they understood that the risks were, there's obviously almost like a cost benefit analysis of what you kind of shake it all out. And they were happy with how it was going to play out should it get banned. I mean, it was written about, it got over 100 pieces of press having been banned. The campaign had been and gone like 2 months before or 6 weeks before. And then it was, it was covered in the Sun, the Daily Star, the Metro, the Evening Standard. It's covered internationally. That's, and they sold more product, one assumes, so it did work.
So that, I mean, obviously not every campaign is equal. So that the aim of that campaign was brand lift. So that's share of search, brand health metrics, that kind of like. We had other campaigns earlier on in the year that were very much sort of the effectiveness was going to be scored around, sales of product and the like, which is why Fat Can't didn't carry any product. There's not a pack shot on there. So not every campaign is equal in that respect. But the aim, the objective was to lift the brand health metrics by a certain score, and it did. It went way over that.
Interesting, thank you.
Just a quick one then. Last, Marcus, I know you've asked, so do you think the economic challenges of 2023 will make agencies more choosy on who they pitch for, or want to pitch more? So are agencies going to be more selective? I think it's a good question, because I'm debating it in my own head, or want to pitch more because I guess they're worried, right? And financially wanting to get back to where they were beginning of 2022.
I think it depends on the. I think they have stopped pitching less anyway because of the talent issue. Just can't find the people. Can't find good people. So I've seen a lot more agencies again post-COVID say no. So I'm not sure whether will that continue. I think it depends on the talent. I'll have to say more than the economic situation.
Yeah, I would go A as well. What do you think, Paul?
I think, well, the correct answer is A, but I think a lot of them will do B because they're scared, and it's, the fear of it. Interestingly, middle of last year, we were interviewing for a role within client services, and one of the people that we interviewed, this is relatively senior people within client services, sort of agency side, obviously. So she was at an agency, and one of the first things she said was, "I'm interviewing for this role because my agency can't stop pitching." That was like the trigger for her for wanting to leave the agency she was at, and they were just pitching for everything. And I think it's one of the quickest ways to kill morale. I mean, like it's just not sustainable. You can't win everything. So there's the roller coaster of wins and losses that you have to accept within agency land. But I just think it exacerbates that if you're an agency that is like sort of hell bent on pitching for everything.
Yeah, I think
it's a trigger for her.
I agree. I think there's more control. I think they will be more selective. I think they want to avoid that burnout. I think they're thinking about their people and mental health a lot more than they ever were. And they want long-term partnerships. They want the right types of clients that are going to give them that sustainability. Maybe it's producing the right work or economically give them more, foundations. So I think they will be a bit more choosy. But yeah, it's good question. But listen, we're going to have to wrap things up. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Paul. Very entertaining and insightful and really helpful content. Obviously, if you want to join these first Wednesday of every month, they're free to come along to. If you want to find out more about BD Matters, I'll stick that in the chat. Shameless plug. We do have an offer on at the moment, which is it's £250 to sign up for the whole year, which is normally £50 a month, and we're launching workshops every single month, which are worth £50 alone. On top of the meetups we do, on top of these interviews that we're doing regularly. So there's loads of stuff to get involved in. So hopefully we'll see you all again soon on the next one. But yeah, thanks, Tina. Thanks, Paul. Really enjoyed it.